gonna have some good conversations with y'all real quick. It's a little loud outside. I'm probably gonna move around. How we doing today? I want to go over some things. Today is the 19th, and on the 19th, we got time. So I want to be able to give y'all a breakdown so y'all can understand reality, similar to the way that I understand reality. As I'm working on building out whole new worlds and whole new systems, I want to take y'all on this journey with us. But on these particular days, I want to raise the vibration of the frequency to get you out the matrix. You're going to understand some things on this live that you probably didn't, and you're probably going to start piecing together things that you probably couldn't have on your own. So I want you to understand and see reality for what it is and not what they've been selling you. All right. So let's get into a few things. Today is the 19th. The 19th is a very powerful day. You understand me? The 9 is the completion of all numbers. 9 represents completion. We're born right after 9 months. Conception happens at this one particular moment. Then after 9 months, we're born into reality. And so what we're really dealing with as we're going into things, we're dealing with mathematics. You understand me? And mathematics goes into the reality of the universe. And so 1, you understand me, is motion. 1 is motion. 9 is completion, which brings order, right? And so in every phase of reality, things have to start off with motion. And before motion, there is potential. That is the beginning of all things. It is potential energy, right? At the beginning of the universe was just potential energy, which is cipher, which is 0. You understand me? 0 is a representation of a circle because it is never ending energy. You understand me? But it is not formed into motion. That is a lot of us. We are like zeros until God is next to us, and then our power is multiplied. And then we're times 10. You understand me? And God is 1. So God can stand in front of us or behind us. You understand me? When God is in front of us, we are multiplied times 10. You know what I'm talking about? It's a very powerful thing. Now, the numbers are very interesting because the numbers represent, you know what I mean? We say 1, we say 2, 3, 4, 5. But what do those represent? Those are easy ways to say ones. So we say 9, that represents 9 ones, right? And the reason that I bring that up is because when a lot of people say I am the one, they're not realizing that we're all ones. We just all fall in different order. Some people might fall in the order of number 2 or the order of number 3, but those are all ones. So therefore, when I say I'm the one, I'm saying that I am one of the ones, not that I am the one, right? Because there's no need for me to be the one because there is no reason for me to exist if I am the only one. Just remember that. So 19 Keys itself, right, is sovereign thinking. It's cognitive defense. It's cultural regeneration. It's strategic, right? System consciousness, right? Especially in a new world of global intelligent age, of algorithmic warfare, of of people losing the battle within. It's giving you the consciousness and the enlightenment so that you can never be oppressed again. You understand me? This is the radical blueprint. Now, as we study the number 19, we can go deep into it, and I'll give y'all some things to go plug into y'all, research that y'all do on this later on. But why is the world the way that it is? Right? Why are we looking at the things that we're looking at? And why is social media in this world frenzy that it is in? Well, the number 19 reveals all. When I started my journey, I first heard a quote from Master Muhammad. And this quote rang out and they said that there's 17 million original people and there's 2 million Indians. And he said that represents the 19 million rusty locks. And he said there's 19 million well-oiled keys to unlock those rusty lock minds. And those rusty lock minds is a representation of you and I in America. You understand me and being locked out because you don't have the knowledge of self and you don't have the enlightenment to guide yourself into the next realm of consciousness. And until we learn the cycle, until we learn the lessons of the cycle, we're doomed to repeat it over and over again, which is why victims of trauma continue to repeat cycles because it's come Sahara. right? It is a karmic cycle until you learn. Learning breaks the chain, right? Once you learn something, your brain goes through a rearrangement and you go through new neural connections, which allow you to live in a new reality. Dimensions exist within the mind, but it happens from learning. Every time you learn, you are pushing and excelling and accelerating yourself into a new frequency and a new dimension of existence in which one can live. But if you do not learn from the pain, if you do not learn from the history, right, then you are doomed to repeat the same karmic cycle over and over again. So if your dad went through a drug addict and you have it in your blood and you don't learn on how to overcome that, then you would then repeat that same cycle. If you are stuck in a lesson of life of financial insecurity and you don't learn what money is and how to properly, control it, master it, and to live in relationship with it, then you are doomed to repeat the cycle. So is the same man. You understand me? As he doing repeat the cycles that he does not learn, which is why anyone who forgets history is doomed to repeat it because he doesn't have the knowledge of that lesson to learn off of so that he can move forward. It is a very simple lesson when you think about it. So as we're getting into the number 19 and the applied principles of the number 19, one has to learn how to live within synchronicity. That means you have to find meaning within the otherwise meaningless. On the day of 19 is a day to where we will take a look at history and we'll take a look at cycles. And when I take a look at history and cycles, I always find meaning in them, right? So let's take something like 9/11. 9/11 was a day which is very powerful, right? What did they say? They blamed and said that there was 19 hijackers. And on this day, it is a day of 9/11, which is a day of emergency. That number represents emergency. 9/11, 911. It is whose emergency, though? It is ours, it's theirs. Whose agenda is it aligned with? Well, let's look at it. It was a day where they blamed Muslims for a hijacking of a plane, saying that it was a terrorist act. Terrorist act is to commit a traumatic act for political reasons, to try to get the state, the government, right, the people to acclimate to your will. So this is important because if we look at it today, we just had another act that happened on 9/10. 9/10, a guy named Charlie Kirk was East Princeton, Part 19 case. 9/10, a guy named Charlie Kirk was killed. Why does that matter? It probably wouldn't matter in your daily life if those things weren't utilized to take your very freedoms away, right? 9/11 was used to take your freedoms away as well. They did Homeland Security Act to where, they created a surveillance state saying that, this is a state of emergency and we're doing this for Homeland Security. And then they have weapons of mass destruction. Well, now the weapons of mass destruction is the freedom of speech, right? Instead of we're being afraid that some country is going to bomb us, we're afraid that somebody's going to say something negative about a white man who has died by the hands of another white man. And this is the new terrorism. And they're only using that for more money and more power. But the people are doomed to fail because they're not learning the mistakes or they're not learning the lessons of the first time that their rights were taken away. If we can get whites to fear annihilation of decreased birth rates declining, then we can get them to scapegoat somebody who done that. Right? When it's really the government taking away your sovereignty, that is the real problem. How do we connect this back? We go to Waco incident, 420, 419. You understand me? In America. And Waco incident was when the government massacred white and black people because they wanted to live sovereign in Waco, Texas, outside the government infrastructure and rule. Didn't do anything illegal. They just wanted to live sovereign and have their own structure, right? And this government is against true liberation and true freedom because if you're not being taxed as a citizen, then there's a problem. So what did they do? They went there, made up some stories about abuse, and they went and bombed these people and they killed them in a mass ritual to show the whole world what happens if you try to act sovereign. Who was there watching that? Timothy McVeigh. Timothy McVeigh was the one who became the Oklahoma bomb, right? This sparks a lineage of white terrorism in this country because they've been fighting to try to break out of the control of their fathers. This goes back to the spans of Greek history when you have the Titan generation, right? Fighting the father generation that is trying to control them. And so this has been a repeated cycle in white history to where the sons is trying to get out of the control of the fathers. So it creates a consistent imbalance where white patriarch is trying to control the son. Now, most people would never think about these things as being concerning or an importance in their life. But when you start thinking about it and you start thinking about the problem with America is that they don't have balance with their own women. The 19th Amendment in this country gave women rights, but before white women had rights, black women had more rights than them. Black people have more rights than them, but they fear their women so much that they would never elect a woman to be president above them. They fear their women so much that this becomes an enemy to what their manhood is. Why? Because they also want to be their woman. They said, Keys getting a little too deep, huh? I want y'all to go look up something, and this might send you down a rabbit hole of things that you probably don't want to know. You understand me? There are people called the groypers. The groypers are these kids. I'm going to write articles about all these things so you can get it because it's very diabolical. And what we're dealing with is we're dealing with a war of meaninglessness. All right. Let's think about this. Consciousness is complexity. If you have complexity in the mind, you have resilience in the mind, you have meaningfulness in society. In a meaningful society, things mean things, right? And in that consciousness, it's harder to control people. When you have for why they're doing things in the first place. That makes it harder to control people, right? When you have people that are thinking and connecting them to the neocortex, and you have higher order thinking to where they're looking at um movies and they're looking at art, right, that has meaning. So therefore their mind is being stimulated, right, with ideas. And in these ideas, you're operating and getting people to think, but now we've changed away from that and we went to brain rot. Things that have no meaning whatsoever, right, are the things that people are now concerning themselves with. And so instead of people having a connected ideology to their art, right, to the complexity of their music, what do you get? You get music that gets slopped together. You get rap music that just has people screaming and going, ah, ah, ah. You get all of these new forms of music that destroy the complexity of the music. It's no longer an era where black people are listening to jazz. And then you wonder to say, how can we have a renaissance? But listen to the music. The music is a representation of renaissance because the music has a complexity built into it, but the music also is directly correlated with the consciousness of the people and the production of what they produce in reality. And so, therefore, if you destroy the complexity of the music, you start to destroy the fabric of reality that the music forms and the consciousness that it informs inside of the people. So, you want to know the consciousness of the people, go listen to their music. Our current music is where we are the enemy in the music. So, therefore, that is the only reality that we can produce. And they're knowledgeable of this. So, they didn't just do this to black people, they did this to all people. Go listen to the music. The complexity of the music has decreased and died out, and it is meaningless. It is just hooks. Now, for a grown adult, this might not be as bad. But for a young child that's growing up in a world where all their music is meaningless completely, right? Then they're not even forming a higher consciousness whatsoever because there's no attachment to complexity in their music, right? And so now, as we're getting into the world and we start looking at meaninglessness, right? And you start looking around in the way that we design things, new architecture, mass brutalism, it doesn't inspire thinking. It is the absence of thought that it is inspiring. You're getting everything to look the same, to be the same, right? The dead internet theory. Nothing is real anymore. Bots are just creating things, right? And everything is fake. Nothing is real. The younger generation are not reading and researching, so therefore Gen Z is just looking at headlines, and in those looking at headlines, they're not activating their thought, they're just consuming. And in that consumption, they start to die out a little bit because there are parts of their brain that they don't need to use, right? And so the pruning process in the brain, which is the microglia in the brain that connects patterns, information, thoughts, meaning that if you don't use it, you lose it. So in their formative years, because they're not using as much pattern recognition, and because they're not being overly stimulated, they're creating these brains that are not complex, which makes them easy to be manipulated. So they're developing a generation that will be completely compatible with New World Order and rule, right? These things continue to get deep when you think about them, but you got to be thinking. So they now have, going back to the groupers. The groupers are this group of kids, mostly white kids, prepubescent, you know what I mean, little adolescent kids, who have barely formed an idea about reality, and they take what they call the black pill. Now, the black pill is something that I just learned about, right? And the black pill is this idea, excuse me, the black pill is this idea that this is so far from, before I say this, like, this is so far from my own thinking. This is so far from anything that I grew up with in reality that it is so foreign that I'm so disconnected to the vast populace of society, right? But this black pill is this idea that they're nihilistic about society. Nihilism is like the complete belief that the system is rigged and there's no reason to do anything. So they go into a stupid depression of why should I be inspired? Why should I be hopeful about the world, right? And so you will see that in a representation of their expression, their thoughts, and their ideas. And so black pilling is when you go down a rabbit hole in this belief that no matter what you do, you can't win in society. That even if you get the best physical features and things of that nature, or I mean, even if you like work out and what they call looks maxing, the young people call it looks maxing. So looks maxing is anything that you need to do to make yourself look aesthetically better that increases your chance of having sex, right? So including surgery. So this is why the young people are doing surgery on themselves. They're on the internet asking other men and for advice on, yo, how can I look max? Because they looking at getting women as points, right? They look at it as getting women as like this technical thing, not a spiritual thing, not a confidence thing, not being themselves thing. Because they're not going through rites of passage and having older brothers that can take them out of the bubble of boyhood. They're looking at how can I just pay for a woman, right? They're going into a very deep, dark rabbit hole. They're saying that they believe that there's just some men who just got it. No matter what they do, they will never have it. No matter how much money they get, or no matter how much physically, they work out and things of that nature. Then you have people called gym cells. Gym cells are people who just work out in the gym, right? And this is their way of coping with not having a social life. You understand me? They just spend all their time in the gym and they believe that, this is their of social reality that stimulates them. So if we're talking about meaninglessness and we go back to the Groypers, they're black pill. They're nihilistic about it. These are these shy teenagers, barely having adolescence, and they started believing in things that don't actually make sense. So what do they believe in? They believe, of course, they're anti-LGBTQ, right? But here's the crazy part. They believe that no matter what they do, they won't be able to get women. They believe that things are just doomed for them. And so in this belief of this doom, they believe that um man, thank you, IC19. They believe that this is crazy. I know what I'm about to say is going to sound crazy to you. First of all, I just want to say that. Right. But these cats, first of all, they're racist, right? And not only they're against like black people and they're against Hispanics, they're against Jews, they're against everybody and things of that nature. And they're against LGBTQ plus IA, all of that other extra stuff. Right. But they believe that they can't get any women and they believe having sex with women is gay. Right? And they believe being in a relationship and dating a woman is gay. And then they also believe that they don't have the ability to get women. So, and I know this not, it doesn't make sense, but then they also start dating each other, which is other men, and then they start dating trans women. And I know none of it makes sense, but this brain melt that is happening online, right? Where they think they have an ideology, but it's not rooting in anything. And then they start believing in things. And so for a fully grown, developed person, this would not make sense. But for a young mind that says that, oh, you hear an idea like that and you're 19 years old and you down a rabbit hole on the internet, right? And you think you fit the criteria of those who will never get a woman. And here somebody's telling you your ideology for you to believe in you and brain rot on social media, you fall into this. And these are like millions of young men that are online, that are in these discords, that find new ways to communicate with each other through memes. You understand me? In these 4chan, Slack channels, on Reddit, and things of that nature. And it's a weird reality. I went down a rabbit hole watching some of these things, and now my brain started to hurt You know what I mean? And I started thinking about how dangerous it is for these young people to be online and how nobody's really taking enough responsibility to help develop their consciousness. And so we have gotten to this point of society and meaninglessness and lack of consciousness, lack of complexity within the youth, the destruction of complexity within a world. So therefore, these things can take place when people don't know who they are. And all of this happens when you have, you know, the entities of the elites destroying the fabric of reality. You're going to get these weird things that start to happen. So going back to the power of the number 19, I did a video years ago because I was talking about how we're going to develop these, what I call nine minds, right? The nine mind, you have the one mind and the nine mind. And the nine mind is the subconscious or the feminine brain, because the feminine brain is connected through our emotions, our subconscious programming behind the layer of our conscious thought, right? It's what we speak affirmations to, right? Our more militant mind, how you doing, is our conscious mind, is our discipline. You understand me? It's where we control ourselves actively, right? But what we have is we have a mind of young people that is out of order because they're supposed to be the conscious mind in front of the subconscious mind, because the conscious mind filters thoughts, is hyper vigilant, watching out for manipulation and control of things. But what we have is a young generation whose mind is out of order. You understand me? And it's in a state of chaos because the one mind or the nine mind is in front of the one, means that it's a 9-1 mind. So it's basically they think feminine first, masculine last. So they're taking feminine emotions and then they're thinking how to defend that logically, right? So the emotion doesn't have to make sense. You just have to feel it. So they're defending their feelings, right? When a conscious mind that is in proper working order, you understand me, is thinking first, rising above emotions into the thinking, into the mind of God, right? And so that is when it's powered. You have a 1-9 mind. That is the 19 mind. That is when you are thinking in proper order. But instead, they got them in an emergency, right? In an emergency state. And how do I know this? Because look at the whole thing called turning point. Turning point is the word crisis, right, means a turning point. When something is in a crisis, it is at a turning point. That is a literal definition. So they created an organization based on a generation believing that they're in a crisis, right? Taking advantage of minds, right, that are in this constant state of self-disbelief, of them having any hope in reality, manipulating those minds into factions that they can then control by giving them new identities that give them some sense of hope of the future. And so these are the young generations that are easily to manipulate and control, similar to a gang. You grow up with no father, right? You grow up with not having a household that teaches you complexity, because the father helps you develop complexity of identity and consciousness through observation and guidance, right? You learn from your father, but when you're missing that father, your mind is not arranged properly, so you start develop a nine mind. You start thinking emotional, more like your mother. And so we have a generation that is raised like their mothers. You understand me? And they're raised in such a feminine capacity that they don't know how to think, right? And so you get a bunch of young men who start processing emotions like women. And so therefore, they want to be beautiful, right? They want to be sexy. They want to get their nails done. They want to be seen aesthetically for who they are. They don't understand that men ain't never had to be the most handsome person in the world to get a beautiful woman. A man would take his power. He would steward himself into position, right? And so then you have these young women who don't have a father, so they don't know what a man is. They only know how to filter a man through a woman's eyes. You understand me? And then they are in society of these hubs that are becoming psychological operations that are these silos that when they're feeling notional, these creators and these influencers and these bots are whipping them into shape on what to think about men, right? And what to think about women. And they believe these things and they think that they're real, and they're not. You're just in echo chambers. So they destroy the youth. And when you destroy the youth, you destroy the future effectively. That's all you have to do to destroy someone's future. right? You go after their youth. And that means after that, all you have to do is wait. That's all you have to do. You destroy the future and then just wait. Women are describing men through the lens of capitalism. That's it. And so when we start talking about developing a 19 mind, that's why, we created the academy and the university, etc. Because you got to really be able to get young people and people inside a space, get them out of the world, isolate them from the world so that you can recondition them into self. And so when I'm looking at these things, I can see things beyond the average person, but I know the average person can't see these things and or maybe just don't have the time to, or not making the time to, I should say. So now we're stuck with this reality of young people who losing their goddamn mind. And the crisis of meaninglessness, the crisis of a lack of philosophy, the lack of meaning in the world. You understand me? Is taking over the minds. So you have to focus on as if you have children, you have to help develop their consciousness. You have to challenge them. You have to give them a multitude of experiences. We have to follow philosophies and blueprints, and we think about what revolution looks like. And it's not the loud shouting that happens in the streets. It's the subconscious programming that is happening on social media that is informing a generation of who they are. So you got the red pilling, which is supposed to be a good thing in some ways, to where a person takes some sense of ownership over who they are, right? Some sense of discipline. The problem is they go far, right? And then when they go far, they end up finding themselves coming to a place for masculine development and then ending up in white supremacy. Then you got the far left where they say, okay, you went too far right. Now we're saying that we need to develop more empathy and compassion for the world and for others and have more openness and tolerance. Then they go far all the way over, right? And then you end up, you know what I mean, promoting ideologies that have nothing to do with your liberation. So here we are dealing with a reality that is destroying us. And so there's no centerism, there's no meeting in the center. And so what we're developing is more so you got the blue pill, you got the red pill, you got the black pill. The black pill is the people that say, man, I'm aware of the systems, or I don't believe that nothing is possible for me to be successful. So they go into this weird, goth type mentality. Then you got what we call the gold pill. The gold pill will be a category that I would fit in, right? Well, people say, yes, the system is rigged, but we have the ability to create our own systems, right? Yes, the system is rigged, but we can be sovereign and we can produce for self and we can be our own God minds, right? And so that's when you have the power of awareness and recognition of reality, right? But it empowers you instead of weakens you into a condition that makes you feel, right, as if nothing is possible. You get yourself back into the right order and the working of things. So the gold pill for a lot of people is not as divisive, right? It's not as polarizing because it is the most rational thought process when one is awaking to the world, right? And so, really, all the youth need to be taking the gold pill. They need to be tapping into the golden keys. You understand me? They need to be tapping into the way that I am teaching them to see the world, right? And people that are like me. But what's happening is they're in the weird, and this is why you really want to watch your children. I just want to beg of you. You think you know your children, but you cannot if you don't know what they're watching. If you don't know, I mean, you need to have a list of their watch time, who they're online with. It is a very dangerous place. So we got to develop the consciousness of these young men to be soldiers again, not to be on here on this far right shit or this far left shit. You understand me? Got them turning into goddamn suckers, punks, weirdos. They can't build nothing from that mind. So this is how they destroy our generations. Because now you got to ask, like, what does the black youth believe in? Then you add in on top of that cognitive warfare, the controlling of how people think through artificial intelligence, through bots, you understand me? Through psychological operations, right? Utilizing technology to control narrative warfare, right? The stories, beliefs, and ideas of what people believe through the manipulation of that. Now, how can people from that particular place of dealing with all these things, these factors of reality, develop a clarity? Because the young people don't have no clarity. And clarity gives you guidance. Clarity tells you where to go. Clarity tells you what you should be doing. Clarity can only come from a place of awareness. So that means you have to start with the foundation of self-awareness. You have to program the logic of who they are. You understand me? Repeatedly so that it goes past the one mind and goes into the nine mind. But you have to teach them hypervigilance to protect that nine mind so that it's not always open. Because that nine is a representation of that womb. And that womb is where ideas can be impregnated into the imagination, right? Which then becomes the reality. So if you're allowing anybody to impregnate you, what you produce, you understand me, can be something negative and detrimental to you. And then it kills your capacity, which is your ability for production. So therefore, they start procrastinate because procrastination is the abortion clinic of ideas and genius and imagination. So instead of being proactive, which is pushing past the effort needed by keeping your mind on a reward so that you are able to execute and challenge yourself and be disciplined enough to bring things into reality to where you have that 19 key mind. These young people say, man, it's too hard. So they live in the potentiality of their power instead of the actuality of their power. The potentiality of their power. So they would rather do things that don't require much effort. They'd rather just be artists. Well, as an artist, it doesn't require me to have much structure in life. You can be a poor, starving artist, and then everything could be wrong with the world and nothing's wrong with you. As an artist, I am just creating my music, living in my la la land, thinking about the potential of me being great. If only I didn't live in this capitalist system and structure that's nihilistic, that is completely against me, and there's nothing that I can do about it. So I'll just sing songs about it and hope that I'm protected from the world. So a lot of these young men have mother issues. You understand me? Because it is a form of self-hate. They have mother issues because they view the world by their mother minds. They don't even think about their father because they don't have enough information on them. And most of the time they hate their fathers because they didn't see their fathers put in the effort to stand up to do the hard thing. They seen their father give up. So that side of them is weakened and so they give up. Then they filter things like their mother. They go through emotions. They start acting like women in the way they deal with each other. This is the problem with reality. So what we're doing is conditioning the mind back into its original state so that they can start to experience their golden age. Once I produce my book on this, it will give you all the guidance that you'll need to be able to go through life without the worry because you'll have the awareness plus the power to do something about it. So what the way I see the world is I see the world. I'm not I'm not fooled by the world. I see the world. The world is not for me. I see it clearly. I see the power structures. I see the elites. I see the technology. I see the opportunity. I see the beauty. I see the ugly. I see it all. I don't close my mind to none of the realities of it because God is not someone who is ignorant. So why would you want to be ignorant of the world? God is somebody that we believe is all knowing and all seeing. So that means that God has to see the ugliest parts, the deep, dark depths of it, the darkness, and he has to see the lightest parts, the greatest parts, the brilliance. So when you're closing your mind off from things, You're closing the mind of God so that you can try to live in one reality, but you're weakening your conditioning to defend that reality because you're not knowledgeable of the threats. I know the power, I know the threats. I know the weapons formed against me shall not prosper because I know what the weapons formed against me are. On these portal days of the 19s, these are cosmic days. These are days where you set your intentions. These are days where you set your intentions for your reality, where you speak out loud who you are and what you want. And you speak from a real voice. Use your real voice. Everybody has a real voice. And there's a voice that we are using in society where we're closing the larynx. You understand me? Closing our voice so that we don't be too much. Speak from the belly. Speak from the real voice of who you are when you walk in rooms. Be your real self. Know your real power. Don't be afraid of being your real self. Straight up. I want to thank y'all for listening. I had to get that off this morning as I was doing my walk this morning. I'm about to see if I can do a quick little workout. But I want you to think about that. Make sure that you're raising your power up. Make sure that you have that ability to make manifest those things that are in your reality. Now, I want to say this last part. You have to develop that 19 mind is what I call the neo mind. Neo meaning one, of course, but neo is a double entendre for the neocortex. The neocortex represents humanity's evolution into a higher thought. Neo symbolizes the potential to ascend beyond survival into liberation. In the film, Neo embodies awareness, intentionality, and mastery over simulation. Qualities reflective of the neocortex advanced functions like critical thinking, language, and foresight. The matrix could symbolize the limbic system or the reactive survival based aspects of the mind, keeping humanity trapped in a state of reactive existence. Neo represents the neocortex ability to override these primal instincts and see reality beyond illusion. The neocortex unlocks potential. In high level conversations, activating the neocortex allow us to ascend above surface level thinking, just as Neo unlocks his potential by bending the rules of the matrix. Both represent the capacity to break free from limitation imposed by environments or conditioning. So when one activates that Neo mind, similar to when the oracle was a guiding force of intuition and foresight, nudging you towards deeper understanding, right? To synthesize information, to guide decision making, your mind starts to operate into working order. So you have to develop a neo mind. And until you do, you'll be stuck in a simulation, not knowing who thoughts are controlling you. Some 19 keys for you, man. I appreciate y'all being subscribed. Y'all tell somebody to tell somebody to tell somebody that they need to be here. I'm working. We finished building out a platform that allows us to build our own world. We didn't want to just build a community, we wanted to build a world. And you all will be able to sign up for very soon as we're just working on the user experience. It's going to have AI built into it and it allows you to start developing your neo mind so you have a source of truth so you're not stuck in a simulation and reality. So tap in with me on that. It's going to be beautiful. Peace to the gods, peace to the family.